Does jump shotting take skill? I will answer this question in this video and hopefully clear some of the confusion around the topic. So if you go over some of the negative reviews on Steam, then 90% of them are people complaining about launch day server issues, and then there are the other 10% that are complaining about jump shotting or drop shotting. Maybe because it ruins the immersion of a World War II shooter, or that they dislike it for any other reason, most commonly claiming that it takes no skill. With what they actually mean is, I think, that they think it is too strong. First of all, to get one of those things out of the way, yes, people were also able to jump in World War II. Did they do that? Probably not. Doesn't matter. In a competitive shooter that is not historically accurate and not a military simulator, no, it does not. Now onto the terminology really quickly. Jump shotting versus drop shotting, those two are often mixed up because, well, they're often used in combination. So jump shotting or jump peeking simply means to jump, peek a corner and to shoot while still being in the air. Now drop shotting means going prone while engaging in a gunfight. If done in combination, you get a jump drop shot. However, people usually only refer to either of the previous mentioned types depending on which part of it they got killed. Now onto the main topic. Does it take skill? This is not as easy to answer, since many people presumably don't complain about the difficulty of execution, but of the effectiveness of the technique compared to that. So kinda like input versus output. If you consider normally peeking a corner, this usually means just to move up behind cover and to stop. So in theory, having to do a strafe jump in order to drop shot would be hard actually. Especially just by looking at the keys you have to simultaneously press and combine to execute the technique. However, I still wouldn't really call it hard or skillful, it's just an essential part of the gameplay. I think right here would be a good point to list the other peeking types in Battalion before we move on to the topic on whether or not it would be overpowered. And like it or not, I will compare it to CS since that one is widely acknowledged as a competitive shooter. Now in Battalion we have 5 types of peeks. First up we got the standard peek. This one is pretty self-explanatory, you peek and you aim. Secondly, after that we got the lean peek. By holding Q or E in Battalion, you can lean your character around a corner. This will expose less of a player model and making you hard to hit. The lean is very short range though, so it actually, the actual improvement isn't exceptionally great, but it's still noticeable. Third peeking type is the crouch peek. This one as well as the next one can be combined with leaning as well, but as the name already says, you combine your peek with crouching, which also should be more familiar with many CS players. In fourth place, less often used, we got prone peeking. Very situational and often only used with leaning. It is still a viable option sometimes though, especially if you like to play off angles. In fifth place, we finally got jump peeking, which now brings us back to the question on whether or not it is overpowered. As you probably noticed, we haven't really talked about drop shotting. Reason for this is because we go over the peek, as in peeking from behind corner. Drop shotting is more or less a last resort if you're caught out in the open, out of positioning. Now again, jump shotting or jump peeking. This is the only type of peek where you have to expose your whole player model and hitbox and to commit to the peek without a chance of being able to retreat to cover compared to the other ones. Which actually already in theory makes it weaker compared to the other ones, so why is it being used? When jump shotting, you still maintain quite a bit of your accuracy, especially if you ADS. And as we all know, hitting a moving target is harder than hitting a stationary target, unless you try to hit them from behind cover. So by propelling yourself out of cover, you want to throw off your opponent's aim, who is most likely holding the angle you could usually easily normally peek from. Now you also have to keep in mind that you have to compensate for your aim while moving, which again is also harder since it usually is easier to aim if you're not moving. The main thing about jump peeking right here, to use it despite its drawbacks, is to not walk straight into your opponent's crosshair and grant them an easy kill. Before we move on and conclude the effectiveness of jump peeking, I would really quickly make a quick comparison to CS since that is what most people most commonly associate skill with. So first and foremost in CS you need to be able to master a certain type of movement, namely stutter stepping or counter strafing, in order to be able to shoot accurately, because in CS your aim goes all over the place while moving. Classic FPS titles like Battalion do not require you to learn such a thing, since your movement is more like an asset. So the simple action of peeking CS already requires some more input to get to your desired output. Following up with that, in CS you got 2 types of peeks usually. Standard peeking with your pre-firing or not, and crouch peeking to duck away under the crosshair placement of your enemy. Not including CSGO jump peeks here, since they're kind of only comparable in effectiveness to prone peeking. Now if you think about CSGO's crouch peek, you can see some similarities. Crosshair placement in CSGO is king due to the high damage of headshots and strongly horizontal dictated movement in CS. By crouch peeking, you're trying to evade said crosshair placement to gain an advantage in the gunfight, but since crouching kills your speed, you also have to commit to the peek and can't re-peek or retreat back to cover. This is the same thing as jump peeking in classic FPS games, essentially representing the same mechanic. Classic FPS, however, do not require you to counter-strafe to be accurate, since one of their main focuses is fast-paced gameplay, which wouldn't really be possible with such a requirement. So to offer more possibilities to raise the skill ceiling, you can crouch peek as well as jump and also drop shot, and pair any of those with leaning if you want to, and give you more options to make the enemy adjust to their aim, and not only horizontally but also vertically. CS can cut some of those options by introducing counter-strafing as a requirement and adding, for example, flashbangs to give you more options to choose from when it comes to peeking. So you can see neither game really takes less nor more skill, both require you to adjust to the situation, may it be aim, positioning, or considering other tactical advantages. So to finally conclude and answer the question if jump shotting takes no skill, I would say that it is not the right question to ask, since it's simply an asset to your arsenal of options during gameplay. Asking the question if it is overpowered or not is probably what most people are actually talking about, and I would give that a clear no. The only thing that would actually give you benefits are the theories of peeker's advantage and making your opponent having to adjust his aim. If you're not out of position as a player and make sure you use cover, you will 9 times out of 10 win against a jump drop shotter unless his abilities were far superior to yours, in which case you just have to practice some more and get used to it. Which brings me to the last part of my conclusion: people aren't used to it anymore. Especially if you're coming from CS, you're more used to having horizontal aim dominating your gameplay, which is why, for example, so many people didn't really like the gameplay on Nuke, since it introduces lots of verticality. Jump peeking also requires you to adjust to that situation. It also requires you to be prepared for more different types of peeks compared to, say, a movement asset like counter-strafing. I hope I was able to clear some of the confusion around the topic and was able to show that jump peeking isn't all that overpowered or easy to use of a tactic, but simply a skill and asset that you can incorporate into your gameplay, nothing more, nothing less. And if you still got trouble to play against a jump drop shotting player, make sure to use your cover, adjust your aim, and be prepared for the engagement. Once you spend some time on relearning that, you surely won't be able to have any problems with it anymore. But thanks for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and luckySkillFaker out.